In October of 1900, a violent storm in the Mediterranean forced a boat carrying sponge divers from the Greek island of Simi to take shelter near Antikythera, a small island between the Peloponnese and Crete. Captain Demetrios Kontos decided to use the stop for what they came to do. One of his divers, Elias Stadiatis, descended to approximately 45 meters. What he saw at the bottom made him surface quickly. He told the captain there were bodies down there, dozens of them, horses, women, men. Their arms were reaching upward. They were statues, bronze and marble, preserved under Mediterranean sediment for 2,000 years, one of the greatest collections of ancient Greek sculpture ever discovered underwater. Divers spent months recovering the Antikythera ephebi, a bronze youth of extraordinary quality dating to around 340 BCE, a bronze philosopher, 36 marble sculptures, glass vessels, amphoras. And then, in the summer of 1901, in the last weeks of the recovery operation, divers brought up something else. A shapeless lump of corroded bronze, roughly the size of a shoebox. No obvious form, no obvious purpose. It was transferred to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, along with everything else, and placed in storage. For nearly a year, no one understood what it was. In 1902, the Greek politician Spiridon Stais paid a visit to the museum. As the lump continued to dry out, the sea salts releasing from the bronze as it desiccated, something had begun to emerge from the corrosion. Stais noticed it and called for his cousin Valerius Stais, the museum director. What they were looking at was a gear wheel, precisely cut, bronze, ancient. The questions that followed from that moment: what made it, how it worked, what happened to the knowledge that produced it, took more than a century to begin answering. And some of them still haven't been answered. The ship that sank near Antikythera went down between approximately 70 and 60 BCE, the era of Julius Caesar, of Cicero, of the last decades of the Roman Republic. The cargo was consistent with a wealthy Roman client purchasing or transporting Greek art. The amphoras date to 80-70 BCE, the Hellenistic pottery to 75 to 50 BCE, the Roman ceramics to the mid-1st century. Someone rich and connected was moving Greek culture westward. The ship never arrived. When the lump was examined more carefully, it began to separate into fragments. Today, the object exists as 82 distinct pieces, the largest being fragment A, roughly the size of a hand. Only about 1/3 of the original mechanism survived, but within that third, 30 corroded bronze gear wheels, inscriptions in ancient Greek covering the faces of the device and the interior of what had been a wooden case, and enough structural evidence to establish with certainty that this was the most sophisticated mechanical device recovered from the ancient world. The mechanism, when intact, fit inside a case slightly larger than a shoebox. Its largest surviving gear is approximately 13 centimeters in diameter and originally had 223 teeth. The teeth were cut in the form of equilateral triangles, with an average pitch of 1.6 millimeters and an average thickness of 1.4 millimeters per gear. This is not rough work. This is precision manufacture. For the first decades after its discovery, most scholars refused to accept what the mechanism appeared to be. The complexity was too great, the technology too advanced. A common argument: the gears must have arrived from a different, later wreck in the same location. They were misdated. They were medieval. In 1974, the physicist and historian of science Derek de Solla Price of Yale University published Gears from the Greeks, a systematic analysis of the mechanism using X-ray radiography. He documented the gear train, established the device's age conclusively, and wrote that the mechanism transcends all that we had previously known from textual and literary sources about Greek technology. It was, he concluded, an analog computing device for calculating astronomical positions, and it was built in the ancient world. The academic community accepted this slowly. It took a technology that did not exist in crisis time to show the full picture. In 2006, the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project used X-ray computed tomography, the same technology used in medical scanners, to read the interior of the fragments without opening them. For the first time, more than 2,000 Greek characters buried inside the corroded metal became legible, not read for 2,000 years. The inscriptions described every dial on the device, confirmed a front panel displaying planetary positions, and revealed details of cycles no one had yet recovered from the physical structure alone. The front panel of the Antikythera mechanism, as confirmed by the 2021 UCL reconstruction, showed the complete Greek cosmos in motion. A central pointer tracked the position of the sun against the zodiac. Another tracked the moon, not just its position but the irregular, variable speed of its orbit, modeled through a pin and slot mechanism of extraordinary ingenuity. And then Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, all 5 planets known in antiquity, each with its own pointer, each moving at its own speed through the 12 signs of the zodiac. Turn the hand crank on the side of the device, and the sky moved forward. Turn it back, and the sky reversed. The back of the mechanism was divided into 2 main dials, each with subsidiary dials of its own. The upper back dial was the Metonic spiral, a 5-turn spiral calendar tracking 19 years, the period after which the solar and lunar calendars realigned to within less than 2 hours. Subsidiary to this, the Callipic dial, 76 years, 4 Metonic cycles, and the Games dial, tracking the 4-year cycle of the Pan-Hellenic athletic festivals, the Olympics, the Nemean, the Isthmian, the Pythian. The lower back dial was the Saros dial, 223 months, approximately 18 years, the Babylonian eclipse cycle. Each position on the spiral marked with glyphs predicting solar and lunar eclipses in that month. Subsidiary to this, the Exeligmus dial, 3 Saros cycles, 54 years, 19,756 days, with corrections of 0, 8, or 16 hours, adjusting the predicted eclipse time for the accumulated drift of the cycle. This is a device that predicts solar and lunar eclipses decades in advance, tracks the position of 7 celestial bodies simultaneously, and displays the calendar of Greek athletic games, all mechanically, by turning a single crank. In March 2021, Tony Freeth and his team at University College London published a proposed complete reconstruction in Scientific Reports. It was the first model consistent with both all the physical evidence from the fragments and all the surviving inscriptions. The key was Fragment D, a small piece that had been studied but never fully integrated into previous reconstructions. It contained a 63-tooth gear that proved to be crucial for modeling Venus's synodic cycle. The team discovered that the mechanism used a mathematical shortcut, rational approximations for planetary synodic periods with small prime factors, specifically the numbers 7 and 17 appearing in the gear trains of multiple different planets. It was an elegant engineering solution, minimizing the number of gears required while maintaining the precision the inscriptions promised. Freeth described the result as an ancient Greek cosmos in miniature, a mechanical model of how the ancient Greeks understood the universe to work. Not decorative, not symbolic, but functional. In June 2024, a team from the University of Glasgow, led by astrophysics professor Graham Wone and Dr. Joseph Bailey, applied statistical analysis methods developed by the LIGO Gravitational Wave Observatory to study the calendar ring of the mechanism. Using Bayesian inference and Markov chain Monte Carlo sampling, they analyzed the positioning of the holes in the ring. Their conclusion: the ring originally contained 354 or 355 holes, a lunar year, not a solar year, arranged in a circle of radius 77.1 millimeters. The average radial variation between adjacent holes, 0.028 millimeters. For a bronze instrument made by hand, without computer-assisted manufacturing, approximately 2,000 years ago, this precision is remarkable. It exceeds what is strictly necessary for the mechanism to function. Whoever cut the holes in this ring was working at the edge of what human hands can achieve. After the 1st century BCE, the archaeological record contains no comparable mechanism. No device of this mechanical complexity appears in any excavation, any inventory, any catalogue from the Roman Empire, the late antique world, the Byzantine period, or the early medieval period. The next mechanisms with comparable gear complexity are the astronomical clocks of 13th and 14th century Europe, a gap of at least 1200 years. This is not the same as saying the ancient world had not yet developed the technology. The ancient world had developed it. The mechanism itself is the evidence. What the gap means is something different. That a technology developed, was refined over generations, reached a high point, and then stopped. Not superseded, not replaced by something better, just stopped. The mechanism did not arrive fully formed from a single moment of inspiration. The level of refinement, the shared prime factors, the pin and slot solution for the lunar anomaly, the integration of Babylonian eclipse cycles with Greek astronomical theory implies accumulated expertise. You do not build this on a first attempt, and the ancient sources confirm it. Cicero, Marcus Tullius Cicero, who lived from 106 to 43 BCE and was therefore contemporary with the Antikythera shipwreck, describes in his work De Re Publica a device made by Archimedes of Syracuse that demonstrated the motions of the sun, moon, and 5 planets. He describes seeing it in the possession of his friend Gaius Sulpicius Gallus. He writes that when Gallus set the sphere in motion, it showed what was happening in the sky for a given day or night, including eclipses. Cicero's description is consistent with a device of the Antikythera type. It means that such devices existed in Rome in the 1st century BCE, that they were known to educated Romans, and that they were the kind of thing a person might own and display. The mechanism that survived is almost certainly not the only one that was built. It is almost certainly not even among the most refined. It survived because it sank. Everything else was melted down. Bronze was enormously valuable, and instruments became metal when they were no longer needed, or when the civilization that created them collapsed. The month names in the surviving calendar inscriptions are of a Corinthian type, linked to the calendars used in Corinth and its colonial network. For decades, scholars proposed Syracuse, a Corinthian colony, as the origin and a connection to Archimedes. But a 2017 analysis by Iverson demonstrated that while the calendar is Corinthian in structure, it is specifically consistent with the Epirote calendar used in northwestern Greece, not in Sicily. The current best hypothesis: the mechanism was built on Rhodes, home to the academy of the Stoic philosopher Posidonius and a major center of astronomy in the 2nd and 1st centuries BCE. The Hipparchus lunar theory used in the mechanism originated in Rhodes. The client for whom it was made appears to have been from Epirus in northwestern Greece. The ship was probably bound for Rome. Who built it specifically is not known. There is no signature, there is no attribution in the surviving text. There is a manual explaining how to use it, but not who made it. In 2025, a team of researchers published an analysis claiming that manufacturing tolerances in the surviving gears were too large for the mechanism to have functioned with the precision its inscriptions implied. The claim was contested. Other researchers argued that the CT scanning data used had its own measurement uncertainties and that the analysis applied too stringent a standard of precision. The debate has not been resolved. What is not in dispute? The mechanism encodes genuine astronomical knowledge of extraordinary sophistication. The Saros cycle it uses to predict eclipses was accurate. The Metonic cycle is accurate. The mathematical approximations for planetary periods are real. Whether the bronze gears as they were cut could achieve the theoretical precision is a question about manufacturing, not about the knowledge behind it. The knowledge was real. The knowledge disappeared. This is the question the gap of 14 centuries actually asks. Not, how did they build something so sophisticated, but why did the tradition that built it not continue? The Roman Empire did not lack for metallurgy, for mathematics, for astronomy. Roman engineers built aqueducts and roads of extraordinary precision. But there is no evidence that Roman engineers built anything like the Antikythera mechanism. The knowledge that the mechanism represents was not absorbed by Rome. It was not carried forward. It ended, perhaps with the specific school, the specific community of scholars and craftsmen in Rhodes or wherever it was built. Perhaps with the wars and dislocations of the late Hellenistic period. Perhaps with the simple, catastrophic fragility of knowledge that lives in practice, in hands and tools and apprenticeships, rather than in text. The manual survived. The tradition that could use the manual did not. The Antikythera mechanism is in room 38 of the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. It has been there since 1902. Fragment A, the largest surviving piece, is visible behind glass. The corroded surface, bronze turned to a dark mineral patina, shows the ghost of gear teeth at its edge. 45 meters below the surface of the Aegean Sea, the wreck is still there. In August 2016, divers found a human skeleton in the sediment, nicknamed Pamphilos, a person who was on the ship when it went down. 2,000 years of sediment had preserved the bones. The identity has not been determined. Perhaps a sailor, perhaps the person who owned the mechanism, perhaps the person who built it, traveling with their creation. What the mechanism establishes is not a tribute to Greek ingenuity. It is evidence of something more uncomfortable. That sophisticated knowledge is not inherently durable. That a tradition of precision craftsmanship and astronomical calculation, built over generations, producing devices of extraordinary complexity, can end without producing a successor, without being recorded carefully enough to be reconstructed, without leaving anything in the world except one lump of bronze at the bottom of the sea that was noticed by accident in a museum in 1902. The knowledge that built the Antikythera mechanism survived because the mechanism survived. Everything else, the workshops, the practitioners, the lineage of expertise did not. The mechanism survived because it sank. Elias Stediatis, the diver who descended in 1900 and saw what he thought were bodies, never knew what he had found. He saw statues. He did not know there was a lump of corroded bronze in the wreck that would, a century later, force the complete revision of what historians believed about ancient Greek technology. The gear that Spyridon Stays noticed in 1902, the thing that started everything, is visible in Fragment A. It is approximately 2 centimeters wide, 2,000 years old, less than 2 millimeters thick at the tooth. Someone cut that gear by hand. Someone who knew with precision how to translate the motion of the planets into the rotation of bronze discs. Someone who was part of a tradition that had been building this knowledge for long enough to make this object possible. And then that someone died, and the tradition died, and the object sank, and for 14 centuries the sky moved without any mechanism built to model it. The mechanism survived because it sank. The knowledge that built it survived because no one recorded it carefully enough. There is a lesson in both facts, though they point in opposite directions. The long archives. New entries every Sunday.